Blog Talk Radio.
Adding to conference.
All right.
Good. Douglas is calling in, but I'm going to decline the call because I want to add him to my, and there he is. I'm going to add him from here. We should have.
Mm-hmm. Oh, good. I see his phone ringing.
I do too.
Hello?
Douglas.
Yay.
Yeah. There you are.
Well, I think we all made it. And I do believe we are also, at this point, recording. So that's impressive.
Cool.
Yes. And we're recording live to the Blog Talk Radio site, but there's no other listeners, we believe, and it hasn't been generally advertised. So essentially we're private, but somebody might tap in and listen to us at some point. And
okay, I don't have headphones. Does that make a big difference?
From here, I can't see you at all.
You're sounding
Doug.
quite clear. Do you have any echo?
It sounds perfect from here.
I don't.
No, I think it's great, Doug.
All right, good. So we won't worry about it.
We will worry
if
about.
If something happens, though, it's my fault.
It's a good place to begin from. I appreciate this very much, Doug, particularly with your family situation, and I'd like to try and keep it down to as short a time as we can manage. Can we expect half an hour, or is that pushing your time?
Sure.
Great. Now,
let's do it.
Hope that we might even extend a little on beyond that in sheer excitement, but if we don't, we don't. By word preamble, what Ernie and I want to do is give you the sort of the meme mover that we're developing, which is the mainstream meme. It's not for technical experts, geeks, financial theorists, community currency specialists. It's basically for man in the street. How would you want to use money? And I wanted to do this through 3 short stages. The first to relate to your life book, Douglas, which I think is brilliant. I wish I'd read that earlier. Yeah. It's I'd read the summaries, of course, and all those materials, but getting into it in depth was very, very valuable. And I wanted to relate our views about the form of money to your issues about connectivity, the connection issues. Then once we've sort of touched through that, I wanted to give you the man in the street entry point and see whether you can relate to that as a general communication idea. And then finally tie it to, of course, the meat in the sandwich, the Community Way project, and how that relates to the existing Berks systems and the like that are around. And I think I can probably do all that in about 15 minutes if we're quick, and then see how it goes. So I'm hoping you'll interrupt frequently when you have some questions or points about what we're talking about. How does that sound as an agenda? Okay.
Yeah, I understand about half of it, but I'm sure when we're there, I'll be able to participate.
Well, let's call this The Show Is On, because it is being taped at this point, so there we go. So welcome, Douglas. Thank you very much for your time, and welcome, Jerry, if you'd like to introduce yourselves for the 10-second intro. Jerry.
Sure, I'm Douglas Rushkoff. I'm an author. Most recently of the book Life, Inc., How the World Became a Corporation and How to Take It Back. And I generally take a media theorist's view of things that most people don't think of as media, in the hopes of helping us understand their biases and where they might push us.
Thank you.
And my name is Jerry Mikulski. I call myself a guide to the relationship economy. I help organizations large and small interpret the current changes in the environment and try to figure out how to thrive in the future environment.
Thank you, Jerry. And Michael and Ernie are known to the listeners of this channel, so we won't go any further on that. Douglas, I've been reading your book in depth. I've been cutting and pasting pieces out and highlighting them and reading them again and again, and it's all about connection and disconnection. You're right on the money on that one, in our view. Our perspective in open money has been for some 20 years that conventional money is a disconnectable. It alienates, separates, it makes us irresponsible to each other and irresponsible for the money system itself. It has nothing to do with us. Are we on the same page there?
Yeah, I mean, it becomes a matter of understanding, why that is, and how that was, both intentionally and unintentionally designed into money. And, once people are able to do that, it becomes much easier to reincorporate alternative value systems and currency systems into our lives.
Precisely.
But it does take, unfortunately or not, it does take looking back. I mean, there's a tendency these days to think if something's not happening in the moment right now, it's not happening. And it does require us to look back a little bit and to project ahead a little bit. Just basic history, to get some cause and effect logic into it. Kind of helps break the hypnotic spell that money has over us today.
Indeed so. And I really appreciated your historical and sort of evolutionary perspective on how the monetary systems have pulled together over the last 1,000 years or so. I approached this as a physicist and an engineer and knew nothing about history, biology, psychology, or anything interesting. So I looked at it from a rather more prosaic and nuts and bolts level, which essentially was that conventional money is established to be a thing of value in itself. The gold coin or the legal tender coin, debased metal, or the banknote are things that are presumed to be valuable irrespective of who has them in their pocket or their wallet, who had them last, and all that. The very value of a major centralized currency is it doesn't care about you. You'd better not worry about that. It's a dollar, and that's set up by the tax and the monopoly control situation. And we are pretty much powerless. We get it, we spend it, it's gone. That's the problem for us.
Some of what you said is good, though. I mean, you got to understand. I mean, that coming out of the Renaissance and then into the Enlightenment, the idea that money would be worth the same thing in anybody's hands, that money doesn't recognize the color, race, nationality, religion of its spender, is very democratizing on a certain level.
Absolutely.
That everybody's money has the same value. On the surface anyway, is a beautiful thing. I mean, there's some great things about this sort of generic, centrally issued money that many other value systems don't have, or seem more rigged, or less just.
Oh, entirely. And I think it was a natural evolution of type that the need to have such a standard of value, such a piece of substantial value in my hand after I've given you the loaf of bread or the camel or whatever, that is what made the world work. I've never been a critic of conventional money in a technical sense. I think it's a brilliantly effective device for doing exactly what it does do. Unfortunately, it also tends to separate and dissociate us in a society. So our perspective is that we need to have monies that fulfill the medium of exchange capacity in particular, and do so on the basis that we can devise a money of an information standard a relationship money. Technically, the simple mutual credit, everybody starts at zero, some go up, some go down. The negative ones have issued money, the positive ones are carrying it. And that money is such a different form of, a different pattern maker than conventional money. Because whereas conventional money, I know that when I spend it, it's a goner, and that's our key entry to our meme package, that we can sit down with any room of people and ask them if they all agree about one thing about conventional money, and the thing we come to is that when you spend it, it's gone. You are basically holding a bucket of it, and as the money drains out of your bucket to somebody else's bucket, it has totally forgotten you and has no concern about you at all. It will never come back by any natural means. It's a goner. Conventional money goes when you spend it, which is a great technique.
Right. I mean,
but that's all it is. And our argument is, well, cutting straight to the point, if we are living with monies that go away when we spend it, would there be any additional benefit in also participating in monies that come back when we spend it? The money-back guarantee model. So there are two qualifiers when we talk to people about money. Do you realize money just goes away? And if you've got that realization, do you realize we can have monies that go round? And if we get people to accept on those two, then we can take them to our third little criterion, which is the tie-in to our community way model, which is the proposition that in this town, you can spend conventional money and it's a goner, as usual, c'est la vie, or you can direct your conventional money to a community cause or charity. You can invest in your community with, say, 100 federal Canadian dollars by putting it to a charity of your choice, who will give you the community money, 100 community dollars, which you can then spend in the businesses that are supporting community work. And third point on it is that $100 that you've just pumped around the system is adding momentum to a community currency flywheel. So our how would you like it proposition to the general public is, you know, money goes, maybe it'd be interesting to have money that came back. Here's a specific context in which you can test out your experience of recirculating money. Because that seems to be the biggest impediment for people. They do not really believe that you can have a stable circulating money supply which is effective inside a community. There's major anxieties about that idea. So that in a nutshell is our proposition, 1, 2, 3, with the third, at this point, only available in Comox Valley, Vancouver Island, BC, Canada. In this town, you can do that three-way switch. We'd like to see that three-way option being available all over the place. And that's what I'd really like to discuss with you, Douglas. Can this be done? Can we get money moving all over the planet very fast? Oops.
Well, it's tricky. There's a few not shifts in focus, but alternative points of focus I might want to suggest. One is the idea of money is so deeply embedded in the way people look at the world that to talk about money as something that actresses money as something that's gone forever still, I would say, unfortunately, focuses people's attention on money rather than on value. In other words, as I see money, and money as it's currently defined and understood, one of the main reasons money as we use it now was invented was as part of the process through which people were disconnected from the value they created. In other words, one way of looking at the last 500 years, one way of looking at the industrial age, one way of looking at the invention of the corporation even, is that instead of paying a shoemaker for making your shoes, you pay a shoe company for the shoes. There's a really big difference in those two understandings of what you're doing. When you go to the shoemaker that you know in your town who's making those shoes, you are paying him, and usually in the pre-Renaissance days it would be in a sort of a grain-based currency. You're paying him with grain. Mm-hmm. You're giving him food for making your shoes. So it's an exchange of services, an exchange of labor, an exchange of value. And the grain, or whatever the currency is based in, is really just a value storage. Mm-hmm. As we move into modern times and today, when we look at money and we think about, okay, we're going to change the way money moves between people, it may not accomplish anything until people understand that they're not buying stuff with money. What they're doing is recognizing and exchanging value mm-hmm. in a peer-to-peer way. It's very easy for people to understand, peer-to-peer media exchange, peer-to-peer emails, peer-to-peer files, and all this. They understand all that as peer-to-peer, but what they don't quite yet get is what is peer-to-peer without a Sony Music, in the middle of it, mm-hmm. or some other corporation stuck in the middle of it. They don't quite yet get, oh, you mean this is what a community is. Mm-hmm. So I see the beginning of this. While we definitely need a tool for people to be able to exchange value with one another, and that a local currency or a let system or a time dollars or the kinds of things you're describing are great new both metaphors for human exchange and media for human exchange, that the more kind of crucial education for people to get, and I count myself among them because I can know these things intellectually but still mm-hmm. not mm-hmm. feel that organically, is that what makes me safe is other people willing to exchange value with me. Other people willing to say, yes, what you do, what you have, what you make, your very existence is of value to us, just as their existence is of value to me. So that if I'm making horseshoes in my town and you're mixing the drugs at the apothecary, we are interdependent members of a community. I need my horseshoes to work properly, not mm-hmm. just so that I keep you as a customer, but so that I keep you as a pharmacist, so I keep you healthy, so you don't fall off my horse and then my wife can't get her drugs. Yeah. It's a very different kind of interdependence than Absolutely. A customer has towards a merchant. And it's that sense of exchange that may, for the time being, really, only work in communities that are more scaled toward human beings creating value for one another than in these sort of larger global kinds of exchanges, which usually do involve, lithium and iPhones and Ford Tauruses.
Oh, indeed, Douglas. I'm totally in agreement with the proximity issue. In our analysis of what we call the community currency, we use the word community because it can only operate inside a connected net of peers at some level. That's mm-hmm. the definition of a community currency. Now, in that, the resonance of the currency is enhanced by smallness rather than large. That is, a community of 100 people is a much higher resonance than a community of 1,000 or a community of 100,000. So
right.
we're looking for the experience of that relationship economy to emerge from the practice. I take your point about the difficulty of getting people's paradigm shift, their ideas frames to shift from their experience of money as they know it. But I look at this also like teaching somebody to ride a bicycle. the only way you get them on the bicycle really is not through the books and the theory. It's you put them in the saddle and move them along. And once they've got the experience, they're up. They may not understand how the bicycle balances.
Right, and the proof, right, and the proof is when they see it work. I mean, which is why the design of these currencies is so important, because, I mean, I go from town to town and I talk about local currencies and all that, and, you know, you go to, Boone, North Carolina or Asheville or somewhere, and they say, oh, well, we tried a local currency and it didn't work.
Yeah.
You know, it was like only massage therapists and crystal healers would use it and no one else would, or we didn't know how to value this or that, you know, and it's like they can't just, ship Arthur Brock or someone to every town to help them develop exactly the right currency for their needs. I mean, in some ways, the willingness to try these things has gotten has led to a lot of setbacks.
Oh, absolutely. We always said that any fool can run a community currency, and we've proved that because we've run several of them, and we're definitely very foolish about it. But it's also true that some very clever people can do some very inappropriate design components in a currency, and it's led to a huge amount of confusion. And that's why we're very anxious to start delineating best practice, documented experience. This is how you can start a currency that not only generates the basic idea, but it actually turns some serious wheels. The difficulty with the massage therapist is, we're talking $20, $50, $100. Once we start talking to our local businesses, like your comfort dollar model, and this is the connective extension I'd like to work on. The comfort dollar was the business saying, I issue some money, you'll get your supper later. And that worked like a hot damn. That's worked 1,000 times.
Right. And that was an extremely basic system. All that was a guy who couldn't get any more money from the bank to expand his restaurant, and we in town ended up giving him money, and he paid us back in restaurant food. We each got 20% more in menu items than we invested. So you put in $1,000 and you get a card worth $1,200 of food. So we got 20% return. And not only that, but we got to keep the restaurant we needed in our town. The restaurant would have gone away had we not invested. So not only did we increase the value of our town and our real estate and our Main Street and our lives, but we also got that 20% back relatively instantly, which the market certainly wasn't offering either. And it was something that was so confusing and novel and strange to business as usual that, the Wall Street Journal and MSNBC and CNBC and everybody's coming up, oh my God, what is this? What are they doing? Is it legal? How is it taxed? What's going on? Because just to get their heads around it, and then of course now every big business is coming to me, oh, how do we do that? It's like, well, I don't know that, Adidas or Nike can come in and develop a currency the same way that a restaurant that we care about did.
Absolutely, they
can't. Nor should they.
No, and they won't with any success. For all of the effective and value of the comfort dollar, it's also a fairly fragile flower. That is, one business being the issuer to a community of potential users makes it the origin of value and susceptible to the time and the scheduling, how people rush back or don't. It can be quite an unstable issue. And one of the things that I think has prevented the Adidas money or the Microsoft money or the Google money has been, I think, the realization that air miles and all that stuff is very risky, very unstable, and very corporate. What we need to look for is rather that a community of a dozen comfort-type restaurants and local retailers and small businesses, and then 24, and then 5 dozen such businesses collaborate as joint issuers, so that instead of the money just being comfort to investors, you eat, and then the money is basically resolved and dissolved, and it's done a function, but it was sort of like one fish rather than learning to fish. Give a man food or teach him to farm. We want to get into the farming business here, and that means as in the Community Way model, that instead of one business being a primary sole issuer, we have 50 businesses. And they're issuing money at the level of 1,000 community dollars per employee. So amongst those 50-something businesses, we've already raised 130,000 of donations to community charities in community money. And then just as you went to Comfort and laid down your 1,000 and got future meals, people can now go to the charities, lay down their 1,000 there, and have 1,000 community dollars that work in 50 businesses. Now that gives us the persistence. That teaches us farming forever, in my view. And that's
right. The trick, though, is, I mean, in the Comfort system, I mean, it's not a sustainable system, because really all he's doing is giving people, I mean, it works when he needs capital up front in order to do an expansion. It's not a sustainable model for him, because all he's doing is giving away 20% of his receipts.
Well, which is fairly safe within his margins. The margin on a restaurant is basically your hard costs on a particular meal are usually 50-60%. So you can afford to play in the other 40 with a variety of 2-for-1s, discount investments, whatever. In this case, a very prudent move. Got your investment, got your support, got your loyalty, and he has a persistent customer base. But he doesn't have the money anymore.
Right.
The Comfort dollar isn't circulating. So it's sort of like it was there and then it wasn't. And we want systems that persist and thrive and are financially viable in their own right. That is, it's not a question of getting a government grant or relying on volunteers or anything like that. This is just as simple as a credit union makes its own way. So should a community currency.
Yeah.
And these are the
right, and that's why I do think thanks to the net that there is a possibility for non-local versions of these currencies. I mean, they're going to have to be within specialized communities. I was not that it's that specialized anymore, but I was trying to convince Craig to do a Craigslist, a version of Craig Bucks, through which people could actually engage with Craigslist stuff. Because this really is, once we do have a net-based non-local local currency, that is the killer app of peer-to-peer networked economy. That's what's going to do it.
Yeah, and, we were talking to Craig about
it's going to do to money what Craig did to classifieds. Exactly,
and we tried to get Craig interested in this. I think it was 12 years ago. And occasionally since by peripheral means. And it is a problem that we become so focused on our particular ventures and projects that we don't always see the associations that could amplify them very strongly. I'm sure we'll probably get Craig's list by default, that he'll start seeing a lot of CC accepted lines in his local Craigslists where there are local currencies. And then progressively he'll see that working. Right now our local newspapers, the two main ones are ignoring us carefully, but 3 or 4 of the local occasional papers are giving us a 50% community way. Yeah.
And web-based papers.
Yep. Yeah, so the doors start opening when people start seeing, well, just how can I lose? I'm creating this money, donating it to charity, getting a tax break, and then it comes back with customers attached, and then I can go on and spend it in other businesses. Can't see a problem. And that's our process, rather like getting the kid on the skis on the bunny slope or into the swimming pool with the flotation system or bikes with training wheels. Community Way is designed to show the local business community, the local beneficiary charities, and the local population in general. This is it. This is how easy it is. Click, click, click. Round and round it goes. You don't have to think about it very much. Just use it and see what benefits it's creating for you and for your community. Now, I'd also say in the long run that we want to see this going to the level of major corporations participating in, for instance, the redistribution of wealth, first world to third. We've got, I think, very realistic schemes for amplifying microcredit fund creation in the third world through community currency donations by Adidas or Nike or a phone company or even an airline to the communities of target, malaria issues in Africa, for instance. The businesses who we would normally regard as being utterly detrimental to our objectives can be perhaps brought into this by their interest in being legitimate and responsible participants in their target market areas. Most corporations are known for coming into a place to extract from it. They're exploitative devices. Why would we do business unless we're pulling profit out? Well, the best way for a business.
But you got to, that's because, and you got to understand that to most people hearing that, they ask themselves, why is that a bad thing? Of course, why else do I go to work? Why else do I go into business but to extract money out? And the reason they want to extract money out is so they can stop working and then retire and live off the money they've extracted.
Precisely.
You gotta, when that's the way people understand economics, and so far we haven't really explained why it could be anything else. I understand fully. And part of me is like, well, shoot, if I could just get another 1 or 2 books written and squirrel away enough money in the bank, then I'm going to be able to last out, my retirement and the years when no one cares about what I have to say or wants to pay me for it. And if I don't have that cash, I don't know what community is going to keep me warm and fed at night.
Well, and those are the communities we have to build. And I think with the increasing urgency,
it's just hard to play both. Of course it is, and it's becoming increasingly difficult to play both sides of that equation. In other words, there are people out there still getting rich talking about the things that we're talking about. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Which in some sense is the best of both worlds, but it's not really being in either. There's something disingenuous about it, finally.
Well, as soon as they start talking about the unbanked and how to get money into the hands of the poor so that we can make more money off them, you've got to start wondering about the motivation process. And yes, I think we've definitely got to subvert that in a very systematic, strategic, and effective way.
But it's not fair to tell people who've been born into a world 600 or 700 years in process, where there is no way to make money except working for a company, where money is something that extracts value from people's labor, where we understand money is the only thing keeping us from the grave. That turning this around is a slow and incremental process and involves trust. And people in this case really need to feel the other thing in their hand before they let go of the one they have right now.
Well, there's one point there, Douglas, is that we don't ask people to let go of the money that they're fearful about and desperate to have. It'd be very nice, I know, for us to reduce our participation in those currencies. But if we tell somebody, this stuff is better than that, please change, then we have a serious problem in our conversation. Whereas if we say to them, look, there's nothing we can do personally about the Federal Reserve, the bank rate, the flow of international finance, the big game, it's out of my control. I have no control over that. You have no control. C'est la vie. So relax and forget the problems of that. Let's look at a solution, which isn't seen as a replacement, even though it may in due course have that effect. But the challenge is not to replace. The challenge is just to co-adopt, to introduce and find benefit from that emerging community. Now, I got to say, I'm going to throw in a quickie here just to sort of perhaps bring us towards a close. I have a conversation going with a major international corporation that has something like 100,000 employees. We want to introduce this meme structure into their network. See if we can generate a viral growth process for this idea inside an organization which has a very wide distribution, even in its own national base. The theory is that in 15 minutes, the basic proposition, conventional money just goes, it's away. Would it be nice to have money that goes round? And here's some options to explore it. 1, 2, 3. That meme can be structured in such a way that it is not just discernible, understandable, but the person who understands it has the capacity to convey that meme onto a further layer. And so my target with this corporation, which shall remain unnamed, but I'm sure Jerry can guess who it would be, is to start 50 conversations inside there, 50 15-minute conversations, and see if those 50 conversations can generate another few hundred. With a tracking system that basically acknowledges the source, that is, the person who turned you on to this idea, he gets a point. So you get a reputation and tracking development package throughout your corporation based upon how that community informally communicates these ideas throughout its population. If we can get that one to work with the unnamed corpse, then we can see it potentially playing in a lot of different theaters as well. So I just wanted to sort of throw that into the conversation, although I don't think there's anything you can really do with it. Douglas, we've been talking now for 45 minutes or so, and I do want to ask Jerry for a quick summary, one of his 5-minute specials at the end of this. And we must be getting close to that. Any comments, questions, stuff you want to throw at me so that we can wind up and get back to the world?
I don't know. There's something that's striking me as incomplete in the approach, and I'm having trouble putting my finger on exactly what that is. It's interesting. I mean, I've seen a few, I mean, very few, but a few local currencies work in places that have some strong leadership and sort of a strong sense of community and people understanding, the possibilities of the small and sustainability and things like that. And I also see the collapse of U.S. currency, which is certainly not over, will also give people more reason to explore these opportunities. But I feel like the meme structure, if you will, is, and these are strong words, I don't mean it this strong, but I feel like the meme structure is doomed to failure if the focus is on currency. Because every time you talk about this as a currency, in the present tense anyway, it pales in comparison to the real money that people actually want to have. Once you're talking about it as currency, what you end up doing accidentally is increasing the value of real money and the stakes for losing it. It's sort of like the problem that Sprint and MCI had when they were advertising their services in the 80s. Every time an MCI ad went on or a Sprint ad, AT&T's business went up. That even though they were advertising something else, people's sense of connection and brand connection to AT&T was so strong that any telephone ad increased AT&T's business. And that happened for a lot of different companies over time. So it ends up messaging then kind of, I think, needs to shift off money. I mean, if you can start to help people see that money is not money, but money is debt, money is an obligation, money is a burden, money ties you to central authority. Owning money forces you to support the central bank and all these horrible people. Owning money commits you to central control. Owning money commits you towards valuing Citibank over your neighbors. If you can pull that kind of neurolinguistic programming shift, then people are looking not towards alternative money, but to an alternative way of engaging in value exchange. And then you have this other thing, which I don't even think we have to call money, especially if it's a time-based, credit debit system. You don't even ever accumulate it. You don't ever start saving it. So it's not money at that point. It's receipts. It's exchange notes. It's another way of exchanging value, providing security, engaging with other people, disconnecting from corporate centrality, and liberating oneself from the yoke of money, rather than it being some way of keeping money.
Well,
that's just my sense.
And I'm totally in tune with that, Douglas. It's been our experience that every time we talk about this as another form of money or whatever, we encounter the anxieties, the differentiations. Jerry has told me that he's heard me speak a couple of times and remains completely confused almost every time. Was that unfair, Jerry?
No, I just think there's a story missing here someplace.
Yeah.
So we need to figure it out.
Well, that's my point, is that we're trying to create story here because we're convinced that story is the thing that moves ideas and moves people, and our story must have both that aspect that you've just identified there, Douglas, which we find very effective for maybe 5% of the population. There's a 5% or thereabouts who are actively engaged, anxious, interested, willing to engage with those ideas. There's 95% are too busy or dissociated or don't want to know. So, whoops, somebody's gone there.
I think I'm there. Yeah.
Okay.
It's okay. It was my mic.
So we're trying to bridge that gap and go in both directions. And I think the story aspect of this is going to be the big one. We're focusing a lot on video blogging as the leverage, on youth employment as the way to kickstart it, like the Chiemgauer models in Austria. We think that you could start off 3 or 4 kids, I mean by kids, people between 15 and 25 or something, and street work this into a local enterprise in a matter of months. So the story will be, hey, we tried it and it works. Now, is it money? Is it community? Is it relationship? Is it measure? Is it stuff? Is it commodity? All those issues will come up for people progressively out of their experience once we have working models that people can play in. Talking to them is a long and tortuous and tedious business. I've been at it now for about 25 years, and it's quite astonishing how little ground we've managed to cover through intellectual conversation. So I'm well satisfied, Douglas, with this meeting and conversation. I really appreciate you bringing your time here. Any other
created value?
Yeah, exactly. And I'll send a few notes to you based upon your book and this conversation that I hope will amplify rather than diminish our interchange. I'm extremely impressed with where you stand in this situation, Douglas. I think there's only another couple of people who've got a similar relevance and relationship. And, well, I hope we will all fly united at some level.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see whether it's a situation of this in a subway token gets you on the subway, or whether we actually are, capable of helping facilitate a new economic co-reality.
That's the name of the game. A new economic co-reality. It doesn't run off the tongue that well, but I'm sure it will be practically good. So,
you call it a NERCO.
Yeah, there you go.
Somehow NERCO just doesn't ring. I don't know. Maybe NERCO's that.
Okay.
Yeah. That wasn't the marketing.
So,
yeah.
Jerry, can I ask you for the closeout on this so that we can shut the lines and go back to our worlds?
All right. Let me go back to the notes I took. So we started out with Michael talking about how Life Inc., Doug's book, is in many ways all about connection and disconnection, about things that have separated us, and about how money has separated us and made us irresponsible for one another and irresponsible to the money system. We're not responsible for that system. That system is external to us. And then Doug started talking about, part of this is why. One of the things we wonder about is why. This was designed in intentionally, that it's easier to, if we can figure this all out, then it'll be easier to reincorporate value systems into our lives. So we need we need to look at some of the basic history here. Michael said, money was established as a thing of value in itself. It was external. And Doug talks about the Renaissance and the idea that money was the same, that the notion that money would be the same value when held by each person or in each country or race or creed was actually very democratizing at the time. And Michael said, that was the natural evolution of its type. It was brilliant that normal money, currency, fiat currency, is brilliant for what it does, but we need other monies. We need relationship money. We need mutual money of different kinds. With conventional money, when you spend it, it is gone. And this is the central meme of the community way currency system. And when you have a local circulating currency, it comes back to you. It circulates within the community and doesn't go away. So trying to convince people of that benefit is the central proposition of the Community Way project. So then he talked about Community Way for a moment, talking about normal money that goes into charity accounts, that then turns into community money and then adds momentum to the community currency flywheel, basically going around inside a community. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't believe you can have a stable currency inside a community like that. And right now in Vancouver, British Columbia, there's a case that Michael has built, but can this be replicated? Can this scale out everywhere? And Doug says, look, it all depends on how you see things. And the notion of currency is so deeply embedded that it focuses people on value, and it's very hard to take people's eye off of that. The dollar was invented as a process of disconnecting people from what they had made. You no longer pay the cobbler for making a shoe and pay him or her with grain or with the products of your work, your labor, but rather you pay the shoe store for the shoe, and there's many layers of disconnection between you and the actual manufacturer. So this is no longer an exchange of labor for labor or value for value. It's been abstracted out. So how come people are so comfortable with peer-to-peer other things like Napster and peer-to-peer file sharing and photo sharing and so forth, but not peer-to-peer currencies? And then how come they don't seem to understand the relationship between that and community building? There's safety in others' willingness to trade with you, and that turns into value. And usually that used to be horseshoes or the apothecary's drugs or whatever else. But these days that's all disconnected. So Michael talked about the notion of understanding how this works is a lot like riding a bicycle, where the difference between knowledge and knowing. I can tell you all about riding a bicycle or show you videos, but it's not until you've actually gotten on one and figured out the balance for yourself and your body understands it that you know how to ride a bicycle. So a lot of people need a direct experience of alternative currencies before they'll figure out that it actually works. And this came up several times in the call, this notion of you can't just replace money with something that people don't understand is going to work. They need proof cases, they need examples, they need physical experience, personal experience of it. Doug said, we also can't ship people like Art Brock off to design a custom currency for each community. This has to be doable by ordinary people. And Michael points out that clever people can also do really inappropriate things when designing currencies like this. We talked briefly about the experiment that Doug had in his community about a restaurant that was about to go out of business. that then issued obligations for $1,000 that would be worth $1,200 in food, sort of comfort dollars, creating a little local currency for that restaurant. And then we noted that Adidas and Nike can't really do that same thing, but also that when there's only one issue, Michael says, that one currency is a fragile flower. So we need dozens of organizations who will collaborate as joint issuers of these currencies. So Doug also says it's probably possible for there to be non-local versions of these currencies because of the massive connectivity today. What if there were Craig's Bucks for Craigslist? Maybe this is the killer app of the peer-to-peer networked economy. And that might do to the fiat dollar what Craig did to the classified ad business. Michael says, well, we tried approaching Craig 12 years ago and in a couple of ways in between, and that hasn't really gone anyplace. So, and we do want involvement of large corporations in different ways, in particular for connections between first and third world development, where it could help expand microcredit donations, for example, in lots of different ways. And most corporations were designed to extract profit, which in the way we're looking at it here is exploitation. So why else would you go into business if you're not going to extract or exploit? You need, as Doug says, to live off that in your retirement. That's why people go into business, is so that they can bank some savings to live off. Or else, how would you be comfortable in your old age? This didn't used to be true, but it is true now. So you can't play both sides of this equation. It's sort of disingenuous to do. Michael says, well, if there's a way to subvert the dollar by using this whole notion of money for the unbanked, that could be really interesting. So these dollars keep us from the grave, and turning this notion around is very, very slow. We need to fuel the new thing working before the other thing is taken away. And Michael says, well, that's part of the magic of the community way, is that we don't ask people to let go of the old currency. It's completely complementary. They can adopt it alongside the old currency. He's working now with a large corporation that has a lot of employees, trying to figure out what is the mean that people can carry in a 15-minute conversation, so that that notion that this thing will work will carry to other layers across the organization. In this system, they're also tracking the source, so that people get credit they get reputation points for actually having propagated the meme further. So Doug has seen a few local currencies work. He also sees the collapse of the U.S. dollar, which isn't anywhere near done yet. So there's lots more reasons to explore this, but the meme structure is doomed to failure if we focus on only currency. It pales versus the real dollar, and in fact often might increase the value of real dollars in the way that early Sprint and MCI commercials increased the value of AT&T as the sound network for really great calls. We have to focus instead on the notion that the dollar is about debt, obligation, burden, the support of a centralized system and central control. There's a neuro-linguistic programming shift, sort of as he put it. So let's not call it money, let's call it receipts, exchange, whatever, and I was drawn to the notion of promissory notes and the notion of promises, and also this idea that maybe we come at money from the notion of identity or peer-to-peer promises made and kept, like I'm going to lose some weight, and then somebody else credits you for having done that. So many people have actually dissociated from this notion. We need a really great story. We need a powerful story here. And it's astonishing how little ground we've covered in the industry in creating these alternative currencies, despite the very clear need for them, in particular in times of economic duress. That's a little bit of my own editorial at the end. Let me turn it back to you in the booth, Michael.
Lovely. I hope we got that on tape. Don't destroy those notes, please, Jerry. If the tape didn't work, then I want to hear that all again.
You can read my handwriting, no problem.
One thing I would touch, when you described community way at the beginning, you said something about normal money it implied that normal money was involved. One of the elegant things about community way is we did all this with nothing. In fact, when we ran into problems with our printing at the last minute, we did a quick jury rig relaunch with about $300 in upfront costs. That was it, $300, and we were up in 48 hours with a pretty tacky paper printing, but it works. Now, creating stuff out of absolutely nowhere with nothing is part of the magical story of this. When we talk to businesses, when we're selling this to them, it takes us 5 or 6 runs before they get it that they don't have to part with cash. No cash involved, no normal money. just your own word in your own community. And those are sock sauce. It seems to be the biggest paradigm. They can't believe it. And that's, they don't believe they can ride a bike until they've done it. So I'm well satisfied. I'm delighted, and thank you very much. And Douglas, anything?
No, I'm going to go back and attend to my swine flu family here.
Well, thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate it, and I hope to how the streaming worked and the recording did, because I was called.
It's great to talk to you. And Jerry, I'm sorry, it's the only time we ever get to talk is this. But I will hunt you down.
Yeah, what's up with that?
Yeah.
Please do.
No, there's some special stuff I want to talk to you about. Not that I've ever made it to one of your events, but I mean to. So I shall.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And we'll...
Thanks for arranging this, Michael.
Well, indeed.
Yeah.
Happy Christmas, Hanukkah, and all those things.
Yeah.
Good night.
Happy Festivus.
Okay, good.